Welcome all into another episode of Lions Central Radio. Probably one of the more depressing episodes of the year for sure. As we get into it here, the Lions drop another one this week, week 2. They lose to the Vikings, 26-16. I am Nick Castor, and all know my co-host Brandon Alisklu, always alongside for what is sure to not be a so wonderful ride this week. Lot to get into as always, folks. Lions didn't look very good at all in this one. Tough to spin it positively in many directions. A lot of negatives in this game. We'll get through all the takeaways from the offensive line. Matthew Stafford's play. What do we think of Joe Lombardi now, week 2? Another poor offensive showing all around. And then we're also going to look forward to week 3 as the Lions have their home opener against the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football, actually. So primetime showing for Detroit. We'll break down that later. But first, we have to get into this, guys. 0-2. And Brandon, let's start right off the get with your biggest takeaway and just your overall sentiment after Detroit really looks poor in this game.
Well, I got to be honest, Nick. My biggest takeaway is that we couldn't even bring a guest on this week. I couldn't do it to anybody. We did try to find a Broncos writer. Unfortunately, some schedule conflicts. Folks keeping it to 2 today, but we just couldn't make another Lions either blogger or writer commiserate. Everybody's already had enough negative words there. What we're not negative about, though, folks, is the fact that we've been getting a great increase in views and shares and all that good stuff. And it's thanks to you folks. We really appreciate it. You are our marketing department, as we like to say. So
Y'all the real
thank you very
MVP.
much for continuing to share. Exactly. But as far as my biggest takeaway from that game, Nick, unlike our listeners, it's like the Lions just aren't trying sometimes. It really is that simple. The fact that maybe not trying is a big word, but or not a big word, but an over exaggeration. But they just keep shooting themselves in the foot, and that's the thing that's most aggravating about this loss. And I'm sure everybody was extremely aggravated. It's even when you go back and watch the game, you go, "Oh well, if that guy had just done that right there, oh well, Travis Swanson just can hold that block for another half second. That's a pickup of 5 and not a 2-yard loss for Joey Bell. It was that type of thing. Even the final play, or not the final play, but the 2-point conversion. If Calvin Johnson can get there just a half second quicker on the linebacker, Joey Bell walks in. I'm not saying it was a great play call. I don't know if you know or noticed this during the game, but the first play for the second half, you want to guess what the Lions ran?
No, please just tell me.
A shotgun draw to Joey Bell.
Oh, what a brilliant play design
It
that
gained
must
a
have.
yard.
Yeah. Well, he only had 4
gained a
carries for
single
2
yard.
yards. So that was actually probably his longest run of the day, right?
Well, the point is, if you could only get a yard on this play beforehand, what makes you so confident that you're going to run this with the game on the line?
Right.
I just don't understand that one at all. But yeah, to me, it was just the constant mistakes was the biggest theme of this game.
Yeah, and it's crazy look at this. The Lions are only down 7 at halftime. It's 17-10, and they're not in the game at any point because they didn't want to be. But as far as the scoreboard goes, Minnesota never went and ran away with this game. They only win by 10 points because they didn't seem to want to win very much either. Adrian Peterson, 2 fumbles on the day. He did have a monster statistical game, 29 carries for 134 yards. He was averaging 4.6. And Minnesota, in week 1, where they just had a terrible game plan and refused to give him the ball from under center and I formation, they realized their mistake and gave it to him in a big way in this one. But Minnesota, on their part, it didn't play a tremendous game. Detroit just, like you said, kept shooting themselves in the foot. And every time Minnesota seemed to open the door, Detroit refused to open it all the way and go through. And Minnesota, they get the win here. They didn't look that impressive, but you didn't have to against this Lions team because there was no part of Detroit's game that was strong enough to lead them to victory at any way.
Well, Nick, you brought up something, and I guess I'm going to have to ask you some questions here. It's I'm a little confused as to this concept. So the Minnesota Vikings, they ran Adrian Peterson out of the shotgun a lot the first week, and it didn't work, right? So the second week, they decided put their player in the best position to succeed, and they didn't do that again?
Yeah, it's incredible, right?
Who gets to decide that?
It's as if Minnesota, unlike some other teams, one of which we'll get into pretty heavily on this podcast, realized their mistakes from week 1, made adjustments, and created a new game plan for week 2 that worked like gangbusters in a way to 134 yards on the ground for AP. He even had a couple of catches in this one, 2 catches for 58 yards. Minnesota realized their mistakes and adapted, and that's something Detroit better do in a hurry with this 0-2 start.
Oh gosh, it's just hearing You explained that, and I did think about that at one point because, of course, I predicted Adrian Peterson not to have a great game because I thought they might be stubborn and continue to put Teddy Bridgewater in what
Hmm.
they think is their comfortable position. But just watching them do the right thing, it's like do the right thing. It's or Bill Belichick, do your job. Just coaches, do your job and adjust. But they, they're not the ones out there making these mistakes either. They're not the ones that are missing blocks. They're not the ones. And actually, the weird thing is Detroit actually tackled pretty well in this game. There were only 2 missed tackles according to Pro Football Focus, and I don't remember any glaring one sticking out on the tape like when James Ahedebo when he bounced off Ladarius Green the week before. You didn't have that. And actually, we'll get into Ahedebo later, but he had a very solid bounce back game.
Well,
The thing that just didn't make a lot of sense, or what I thought the biggest problem on defense was, talking about those 199 yards Minnesota rolled up. Detroit just couldn't stuff them up front. They just couldn't
well,
hang with them in the trenches.
yeah, that's exactly right. You said they tackled well, but that's after Adrian Peterson's 4 yards past the line of scrimmage before anyone touches them. And then for the second week in a row, you're looking at the pass defense. You've had two quarterbacks in 2 weeks, good quarterbacks, mind you. I mean, Philip Rivers is somewhere between good and very good. Teddy Bridgewater, an up-and-coming quarterback in this league, but they're not the greatest that this league has to offer. And both of them go for 80% or better completion percentage. You can't have that 2 weeks in a row in this league and expect to win. Detroit's letting guys make the catch before anyone even attempts contact with them. I don't know what the cushion is for. Rasheed Mathis, uh, bless his heart, he just can't keep up with decent receivers in this league. You saw what Keenan Allen did to him in week one. We're going to get to it in a bit, but I am fearful for what Emmanuel Sanders is going to do when he runs crossing routes over the middle of the field, and Rasheed Mathis is supposed to stay with him in coverage, because that's going to be a tough assignment for Rasheed Mathis that does not look very good through 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they're not. Well, and again, it doesn't seem that the coaches are putting them in the best position to succeed. And obviously,
Right.
health. We'll get into that, a little later regarding that. That's still a problem, but DeAndre Levy, they did miss. Obviously, he's a guy that can shed blocks. There were plenty of linebackers not getting off blocks, but there's a really indicative play in the first drive. It might have been the first one that Gabe Wright and Jamel Cujo were in together, and both of them just get blown off the ball. There's the not true double teams, but the ones where one of the linemen is tasked with blocking that guy. The other guy helps on his way to the second level to take care of a linebacker. Neither
Yeah.
of them gave any restraint there. Got sealed out to play. And and then once Adrian Peterson gets through the first line, he gets to the second level.
Good
Here
luck.
comes Darius Slade rushing in from the side,
Mhm.
and he gets sucked in, and Adrian Peterson makes a rather easy cut because Peterson didn't look that great, to be honest. It wasn't like he was out there and it was 2012 and people are just bouncing off him. It just, it's almost hard to explain that he was getting that far behind that offensive line because it's not that good. Detroit had better hope Karan Reed is what they thought he might be as of a month ago or so, because Jamel Cujo, the guy has a lot of effort and everything else, but he cannot stop the run in this league. And Tyron
Right.
Walker didn't play much better either.
Yeah, and while we're talking about some of those deficiencies on defense, Stephen Tulloch, who we critiqued heavily after week one, going to continue to do so after this one, where he continues to look like a pylon on passing plays, in my opinion. And while Coach Caldwell said that Tulloch we saw Whitehead come in for certain plays during the game. Caldwell says that it wasn't really due to Tulloch's play, but different packages that the team runs on defense. Take that for what it's worth. I don't really take that at face value. Stephen Tulloch's just not playing very well. And while Tahir Whitehead isn't a marked improvement, there's just no upside to having Stephen Tulloch out there as a starter for an entire game at this point. I think he's a spot player at best here, Brandon. He can't get it done as an every down player right now, and that's just a tough reality for a linebacker who, coming off that injury, just he doesn't have it.
Well, the problem is who else are you going to put in there that's
I
better?
know,
Tahir Whitehead's not even starting over Travis Lewis.
right? That's why it's there is no good option here. But just watching Tulloch try and go play after play, it's hard to watch at times because he just can't keep up with the pace of play.
There is one thing actually, and this is kind of throwing you a bone. I don't like to do that too often, but Kyle Van Noy kind of looked like a real life football player out there a few times. He had
Yeah,
that game opening tackle that on the kickoff that definitely that's a touchdown. He
yeah,
makes it nice open field tackle. I'm like, all right, that was nice to see. And then, of course, on that fluke flip play, which you can't. worry about those plays. If they happen, they happen. There's really nothing that Troy could have done on that play where Kyle Van Noy actually came up and he blew up Peterson
Yeah.
on his way to Bridgewater had him, was bringing him down. Bridgewater's made a good play, got the flip out, and Adrian Peterson's gone for, I think, 59 yards. But it was nice to see him do that. And he's still only getting 5 plays, whereas they're talking about, well, we're only playing Tulloch because packages and game plan and matchups. So, even though they don't worry about those too much on the other side. It's a little frustrating to see it. And yes, this team needs Levy back, but he's not going to fix all of these defensive problems on their own. They have to, one, get much stouter up front and in between the defensive ends there, who I thought Ansah, I think we were getting to him. He had a pretty solid game. Jason Jones did Jason Jones things. He wasn't great, but he didn't do terribly. But the contain was outside. It was absolutely horrendous how many times that Adrian Peterson crashed into the line of scrimmage and was able to just bounce it and run outside and pick up 5 to 10 yards. And it happened repeatedly.
Yeah, in regards to Kyle Van Noy, I mean, just trying to find a glimmer of hope with this team and with him in particular. He's someone who we've had to chide quite a bit after his poor preseason. I mean, it's not that he's not athletic enough to play in this league. Obviously, as a second-round pick, and he's still so young. It's just trying to keep up. It seemed like the game was moving too fast for him mentally, and he couldn't keep up with where the play was going. Perhaps it's just him just getting more reps and finally being on the field. And again, it was only a couple this week, but seeing week-to-week development out of a young player is huge at this point. And I mean, it's going to be darn near all negative for whatever else we talk about from this game. But yeah, a good bright spot from Kyle Van Noy. You take what you can get there. I think the biggest thing, and I suppose if you have to nail down one reason Detroit loses this football game, do you go with turnovers? Yeah, well, I'd go with if you're picking a coordinator, I'm going with the other one. But I mean, is it
Which
turnovers?
Is funny. It's a debate. Well, turnovers were huge, and I think for me it just goes to mistakes. It's just mistakes because that's what the turnovers are, right? But I think we'll have a little fun with this Lombardi versus Austin thing. Because Austin made some horrendous mistakes in this game that I just don't understand. He's outsmarting himself or something. Well, but as far as those turnovers, they couldn't have been more soul crushing. I mean, the first one is Lance Moore right after halftime, after the team looks to be moving the ball, even though they tried running a shotgun draw to Joyke Bell to start the half. But still, there was some momentum there. There was some spark, and then he just literally has the ball ripped away from him. They were
literally just taken from him. I mean, he didn't fumble. He had the ball stolen from him.
Well, and I'd say Jason Jones' big gaff, that was a turnover. I mean, it's not going to count in the stat sheet anywhere, but Adrian Peterson, who bless his heart, really tried to fumble away this game put the ball on the ground, 3 times, I think? And he only ended up losing 1. But that's 7 points. Well, think if they don't get that touchdown and Detroit scores at the end with behind the offensive bright spot of the day, Eric Ebron, it's a totally different game, and it's just these stupid little mental mistakes. This wasn't supposed to happen with the Caldwell team. You have to wonder, where did the discipline go?
Well, and if we did our preseason predictions, and this is already starting to look pretty laughable, but I said 11-5 for this football team, and it's because I thought the offense was going to be drastically improved, and while we knew the defense was going to take at least a small step back, you're not going to just replace Ndamukong Suh and get better defensively. We didn't know Levy was going to be out for who knows how long period of time this is going to end up being, but I thought the offensive improvement was going to be enough to buoy this team and keep them at the level they were a year ago, 11-5. But I mean, the training wheels still aren't off of this offense. The longest passing play we saw on Sunday was 19 yards. And while the targets went to Calvin Johnson in the way that they're supposed to, I think it was the final number was 17 and he had 10 catches. There's nothing to this offense. There's no substance. It's still training wheels heavy. I mean, Joe Lombardi he's got a Happy Meal with like 10 toys in it, but he doesn't want to open any of the toys. He just throws them away with the bag after he's done with the meal. It's ridiculous. He's not opening up this offense in any discernible way or letting the talented players that he has at his disposal do what they're supposed to do. He's handcuffing everyone on the team, Brandon.
Well, there's also, you're getting a little heated, buddy.
I'm not happy.
You want to take that? Do you want me to just talk about Ziggy Ansah for a little bit?
Take a shot? Yeah, I could use a shot. Yeah, no, do what you need to do.
Well, the one thing I will say is it's hard to blame them for getting rid of the ball quickly because obviously, and we'll get into this, Matthew Stafford. I'm not sure when the actual time of death was, but there's no way he's still alive from that beating. That
Hmm.
was just brutal, and it was hard to watch. It was one of those. This is why football is getting a little tough to watch, and Stafford, he's proven this before, and he has for a long time now. He's an absolute. All respect to Kellen Winslow, but he's an absolute soldier when it comes to taking abuse and staying in the game.
Hmm.
But I agree. You have to be able to at least stretch the defense, at least make them scared of it. And there's not a single attempt that traveled more than 20 yards here. Yeah, not more than 19. In he had 21 attempts in between 0 and 9 yards in the middle of the field. 34, 42 of their passes. What is it? 53 total or something like that.
53.
Yeah,
53.
was it? Oh, I apologize. I don't know. I'll get to the math later. 29, 34 of their passes were within 10 yards. Actually, when you include you have 36 when you include those that went behind the line of scrimmage. So it's just
You're
there was
boxing
just
yourself
no
in.
attempt to go deep. And yes,
Right.
they're boxing themselves in deep, and it's you can do that when you have Philip Rivers and their type of game plan because he will continuously get the ball out there and he'll do it quickly. As we talked about last week, that 1.77 seconds, but Detroit couldn't do that. They couldn't get free half the time to get the ball off quickly, and it ended up with Stafford taking a lot of abuse.
Yeah, and he's taken that abuse, but because they're down in the game, they have to abandon the running game. Amir Abdullah gets far fewer carries than he should ever have, and moving forward, he needs to get a ton more. And Joique Bell's role needs to continue to be reduced, and that balance should move one way seriously. But yeah, it's a terrible thing because Stafford has to keep dropping back more to try and get him in the game. But the offensive line's pass protection is such a joke that he's getting abused every time he does drop back. And while they never did take the lid off the defense, even if they had tried to, I don't know if Stafford would have had any time to make those deep throws because the offensive line couldn't pass pro to save their life in this game. Minnesota's defensive line, which I really don't think is one of the better ones in this league, by and large, just had their way with Detroit throughout the entirety of this game, first quarter to fourth. So I don't know what the answer was in this game, but moving forward, they have to at least try some deeper stuff in the passing game and force those safeties back and the linebackers back. Right now, they're boxing themselves in 10 yards and shallower, and it's not going to be good against some really good defenses the next few weeks, especially against the Broncos and the Seahawks.
And that's again, yeah, it's going to come down to are they going to have the time? And one of the most discouraging parts of this game was that Larry Warford. I don't know if he should have been playing. Maybe
Mm.
he's still hurt, but he was one of the worst linemen out there. He got beat for a sack, even though they didn't. I don't think they counted it against him. If you look at somewhere like Pro Football Focus, and granted, neither tackle played a very good game either, but it just the time wasn't there. I thought Stafford showed some solid poise in the pocket despite there not being one half the time. But the game completely changed for Stafford when Harrison Smith blew him up.
Hmm.
It was about a minute left in the third quarter, and you could see Minnesota was bringing the blitz hard to the what would have been the left side of the offensive line, and he tries to get it to Calvin quickly, almost through a pick actually, and he was never as accurate after that hit. He was a completely different quarterback from what he was for 3 quarters.
Yeah, well, Stafford made some bad decisions in this game, and he made some ill-advised throws. And the one where he threw a pick and a penalty called it back, and then he threw another pick. That's after he's been abused for three and a half, 3 quarters, folks. And you know what? We're going to have plenty of chances to really dissect Matthew Stafford's game, the right and a ton of wrong, and there's plenty of wrong to get into with Stafford's game through 2 weeks.
Mm.
But in this game, it's just I'm not placing very much blame whatsoever on him because he doesn't have time to even dissect the defense in any discernible way. Larry Warford can probably squat 1,000 pounds, but he can't block a soul in pass protection in this game. I don't know what you want your quarterback to do when he has to drop back 53 times and only on maybe 15 to 17 of them does he have time to actually read a defense. Stafford, he made some bad decisions in this game, but very little of that is going to fall on him. His offensive line didn't give him a chance.
Well, and not to mention that he was the leading rusher for this team. I mean, that's ridiculous. I think he had four carries for 20 yards or something like that. I mean, the running backs.
Yeah,
You
four
you
for
talked
20
about
is
Joique
yeah.
Bell, half-yard average, and that's the play that Joe Lombardi wants to run with the game on the line. what's more frustrating than any of that is when Detroit let it loose and just let it hang out there before halftime, and they were able to move the ball
Hmm.
quite effectively. Joe Lombardi was dialing up the right plays. Stafford was on point on that drive. I mean, that one where he floated it above the linebacker and but it was still kind of, it was like a curved rope. I can't explain it. It was a beautiful toss, and it went for like 20 yards or so and got them down to around the 20. It's just so infuriating to see how well they can play in those situations, but they can't do it with any consistency. And is that play calling? Is this
Well,
refusal to this need to keep running zone runs when Travis Swanson can't handle it, Cornelius
well,
Lucas can't handle it? Their best runs, and there's a Justin Rogers
yeah.
article that I only got halfway through, where the only success Detroit had came on dive plays, power plays, off tackle,
Well,
not
and
this zone crap.
a lot of it is you talked about at the end of the half when they allowed themselves to get into a rhythm and develop an identity on offense. But for so much of the game, I feel like Joe Lombardi is like you mentioned with Terrell Austin on the other side. He's outsmarting himself by constantly shuttling in different players and mixing up packages. When I mean, you do that to a degree, but to do it seemingly every play and never have anyone stay on the field long enough to develop rhythm in the passing game, it's just something that I don't see how it's benefiting the team in really any way. No one's out there for enough plays in a row to find a rhythm on offense and give Matthew Stafford a chance. It just a lot. I don't have very many positives from the offense 2 weeks in. I mean, outside of that first quarter against San Diego, there's just not a lot going on with this offense.
Well, and again, that I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. This is what's so frustrating about this team when they're up 21-3, and now
Yeah.
it's just all falling apart. But even Calvin Johnson in this game, granted, he had that. I don't know who else can make that catch, that touchdown, which you just had to wait. You weren't sure about that one. You're like, it's Calvin Johnson. It's not going to count because they just never seemed to for him.
Hmm.
But he was only credited with one drop in this game, and it was that hook
Oh, it was
that
bad
hit
too.
him right in the chest.
Yeah.
But there was a back shoulder throw later in the game along the sideline. It was inexplicable that he dropped that. He needs to make those catches. He needs to be the superstar. When the only one that was really Tate had a decent game, but the only one I think that played at least to the level he should have in Stafford, it's kind of tough to really evaluate the way he played.
Mhm.
But it's got to be Eric Ebron. He was making a lot of tough catches. He had that. When he bobbled one, I think it was like a quick out. He ended up
Yeah.
taking it for an extra 8 yards, but he bobbled it. I'm like, oh God, come on!
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that. But then that last touchdown, that was a man touchdown. That's why you get Eric Ebron touchdown, because he takes the ball and then he trucks over to DB on his way to the end zone. But he was the only one that seems to be focused. It's like these guys aren't focused, and this is a problem that we talked about under Jim Schwartz. Small level focus. They can't consistently do the things they're supposed to do. And this was supposed to be Caldwell's forte. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, Ebron I thought looked great in this game, and he was the presence over the middle that really draws in defenders. And when he's even not catching passes, watching the tape on this, other teams are going to finally, or they're going to really be drawn to him, and hopefully that opens things on the outside. It does what you want to see out of Ebron, especially with Pettigrew MIA for the time being. So Ebron's going to have plenty on his shoulders next week against Denver. Yeah, undisciplined,
Well,
and
this
it's a term you don't expect to use with this team, but yeah, you're right. It's undisciplined play and just a lack of, I guess, focus from a lot of guys, both offensively and defensively. But it did stand out more on offense.
Well, and I mean, we could go on about this game forever, and it almost seems like I have. It seems like I've been talking about it for 2 days, which technically I have. It is Tuesday. But when you look at, even Glover Quinn is doing weird things.
Yeah.
It's just weird. One of the key things, though, in going to the defensive side here, is the contain. Daryl Tapp, he's just not big enough to disengage and contain, and that was killing them. Philip Hunt on that reverse, it was like he was
Oh,
too overexcited to handle his job responsibility, and he jumped
yeah.
inside. Literally jumps to the left for no reason, back towards the line of scrimmage, and they run right around the back of him, because by the time he sees what's going on, tries to adjust, it's too late. Do your job. I mean, I hate to echo the Patriots, because I know there are people on that team that have jobs that may or may not be legitimate, but at least they're winning and they are in fact doing their job. But that goes for the coordinators as well. Granted, the head coach needs to be the one overseeing everything, but Terrell Austin, he's not covering up the A gaps against Adrian Peterson. You're on your 4. You need to cover over the center and guards from the 4-yard line when Adrian Peterson's on the other side. There was Josh Bynes played the most snaps for the linebackers. That's not a good thing.
That's not a good
They had
sign, is
him.
it?
There was a 3rd and 8 where Kyle Rudolph is lined in tight. Well, he's slightly behind the tackle and he's standing up, so he's not lined in tight, but he's in the short slot there, I guess, for lack of a better term.
The wing.
To the right side, and then Josh Bynes is lined up over the left guard and left tackle. Bynes was supposed to cover Rudolph in the opposite flat. So he had to run across the formation. By the time he gets there, Rudolph is able to grab the ball and twist his way to a first down. These are the types of things that I just can't understand. And Lombardi, watching the tape, it looked like Minnesota knew every time Detroit was going to run an outside zone. And the only thing I just didn't know if it's because I didn't want to continue watching it for a 4th and 5th time or if I just was lazy. But it seemed like every time that Detroit was in the eye, Minnesota knew where to go and they shut down the play with ease.
Yeah, and
that's obviously that Lombardi guy.
Well, and just to transition, I guess, slightly, we're talking about defensive assignments and knowing gaps. My MVP, not because he was tremendous in this game or really overly great, is Ezekiel Ansah's shot, just because I consistently know he's going to give top effort and be a good to dominant player at the end position. Ezekiel Ansah's stats in this game, I think he did end up, he definitely had a sack. I'm not sure how many tackles he ended up. Let me check it real quick. Yeah, he ended up with 6 solo tackles, the 1 sack, and 3 tackles for a loss with a QB hit. But he's the MVP because from week to week, you know what you're getting from Ezekiel Ansah and a shot. You know in week 3, he's going to show up against Denver and he's going to be a presence at the end position. Whereas on the rest of this defense, outside of Darius Slay, I don't know who's going to deliver a great game week 3, week 2, week 3, week 4. You're going to talk about a Hedebo, not to spoil it. You're going to talk about a Hedebo having a great game after a poor week 1 effort. Ezekiel Ansah, you know, week 1, week 2, week 3, he's going to be there and he's going to be a great presence at the end position. He was good in this game again. He's going to be good next week. There's just not a lot of guys on this defense you can say that about.
No, I mean, obviously, the whole reason we had this drinking game about Ezekiel Ansah.
I'm getting it. I'm feeling it now.
I love the guy. I know my buddy Will. I think he actually does play the game, so I'm sorry, buddy. Enjoy your evening. And
it's been light for quite a few weeks in that game. I feel like we needed a week like this to really enjoy the Ansah shot game.
But well, there were a couple things that jumped out on film with Ansah.
Shot. Here we
go. He was very textbook with some of his moves where his hand fighting was just so on point. There was a 1st and 10 where he completely dominated Adrian Peterson trying to come out of the pistol formation because he was able to just toss aside the guard or the tackle, and it was exactly what you want to see. And he even had some Sue-like qualities where he occupied 3 blockers at one point, allowing Abdul Qudus to get the pressure instead. That's because he has been playing that well. Now, it's also tough to get pressure, though, when the team's running the ball that well. That means their play-action game is very strong. I know you talked about Bridgewater having at least a very efficient day, but when you only throw 18 passes because you don't have to do anything else, it's not nearly the degree of difficulty drops quite a bit from throwing 53 passes. So I thought Ansah was really good. Obviously, as you already said, James Hedebo is my game MVP, and he did that coming off the heels of being my most disappointing play last week. He really came to play this one, and he made my notes just offhand 3 straight times for excellent open field tackling. It was exactly everything he didn't do in the first game when he was getting juked out by Keenan Allen on that 3rd and was it 19, 18, whatever it was. He was doing the opposite in this game, making sure to drape all over Rudolph in the back of the end zone to force a field goal, or whether it was tackling Rudolph along the sideline when he could have probably picked up at least 15, 20 more yards. He played that well. It was great to see for him. But yeah, it's also with him, you're not going to get nearly the level of consistency that you did or that you will with Ezekiel Ansah.
Yeah, shot. You have to temper it slightly, and we'll get into our most disappointing here. And mine is the entire offensive line. I'm not gonna say well, I'm not gonna spoil yours again, but mine's the entire offensive line and just the mainly the pass protection. How poor it was. We didn't even get to see enough of the running game to say how bad the run blocking was. It was terrible, but it was on such a limited amount of plays that it's the pass protection that really gets to me, and that really gets to our before you get into your most disappointing, just our question we got on Facebook from Ron Hartley, and he asked how badly hurt is Stafford, and how has it affected his game? Does Detroit need to find a backup quarterback that they can trust? We've long since crossed that bridge, Ron. There is no other backup quarterback to go get in a hurry. They're sticking with their guy, and they're gonna if they do need to bring in a backup, it's gonna be someone that's already on the roster in Dan Orlovsky, so that they're not gonna go the route of finding a backup quarterback from free agency or what have you if it comes to that. But I mean, we don't know how badly hurt Stafford is at this point. You saw his elbow and whatever the heck. I'm going to test the sensors or whatever the hell happened to his elbow in that game where they had it saran wrap, aluminum foiled, and I don't know what else the hell they did to his elbow. But you know how the Lions are in their injury notes. Just Caldwell does a post game or not a post game. It's the day after interview with Dan Miller on local radio every week, and I just always hope for maybe a slight tidbit, but no insight whatsoever on what's going on with Stafford. So we don't know how it's affected his game. I mean, a quarterback and an elbow injury, we don't know how serious it is. So unfortunately, Ron, we don't have a ton of update on how badly hurt Stafford is. It's something that we will, of course, be watching throughout the week. We don't have a ton of insight there, but for me, Brandon, it was most disappointing the entire offensive line and just how bad they played in pass protection.
Yeah, and it darn near got Stafford killed, as you alluded to. I don't even think we've said it yet, but I'm sure everybody knows. We had to get X-rays done on his chest and ribs afterwards. So there is that concern as well. The only news we have since we record on Tuesdays is that he did lead the offense in Monday's walkthroughs. So, take that for what you will.
While
Stafford
Dave
said he's
Burkett
going to
also
play.
noted, Dave Burkett did note that Stafford put on both shoes with his right hand. He did not use his left hand to put on a shoe.
Great.
That's insight, folks.
That's some serious insight, and props to Dave Burkett for coming up with that nugget. For me, though, I focused on Larry Warford, as we've already kind of talked about. I don't know if he's still hurt. I don't know if it was just a bad game, shaking off rust, whatever it might have been, but it was a very bad game from Detroit's best and most talented lineman. And speaking of which, so Lucas obviously did not play very well. He hasn't played well pretty much ever, save for one game against the Chicago Bears last year. Mm-hmm. But Adrian Waddle was active.
He dressed.
What's the point of activating him if you're not going to play him? I don't get it. I guess maybe in case Lucas went down, then they'd force in Waddle. But if you're going to do that anyways, then just put Waddle out there. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. So that was very confusing to me. One other thing, and I have to end with this note for this game. We can finally move on. But so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted 7 offensive drives that failed for one reason or another. Well, and I think there are 2 that were caused by the Vikings. We have, remember when Lucas didn't chip on the very first wide receiver screen, and and Robeson was in the backfield, and lucky he didn't pick it off for a pick six. Bell had hesitated behind the line. There's a holding penalty when Stafford tried to flip it to Bell, and somehow it went right off Bell's chest. There are the 2 fumbles. There's the Stafford interception, and then there's when Stafford got crushed by Harrison Smith, and as we said, that changed the whole complexion of the game. So 2 of these, because there's another one where there's good coverage downfield and Stafford ran it and didn't make it. 2 of these are caused by Minnesota's defense. Well, I guess 3 if you want to use the at least the Moore fumble. That guy earned that one. So Detroit is literally ending more drives than the opponent's defense is. That's just not going to get it done against anybody, especially on the road.
Yeah, you only score 16 points, and we didn't really even see the punter Sam Martin all that much. It's just if you look at the box score without seeing the final score, you know exactly what happened in this game. Detroit they shot themselves in the foot too many times, and I can't wait to move on and try and look past this game because this is a serious blemish that I didn't see coming.
Are you really sure? Because the schedule doesn't get much easier from here, buddy.
Yeah, I know. You know, when we in the preseason, as we're looking over the schedule, and we did it quite a bit because in the offseason there just isn't a whole heck of a lot to get into. Those first 4 games we said were going to be extremely tough as you go San Diego, Minnesota, Denver, and Seattle. I was thinking they were going to go 2-2 and through that stretch. I thought it was the first two that they were going to win. Now they go home against Denver, and then they got to go play Seattle. I mean, we'll get into our predictions, but it's not going to get any easier. And 0-4 is a very real possibility for this team. Looking at it, you're looking at a Denver team that, well, it
Someone's
has.
0-5.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just kind of branching off into the quarters, the first quarter of the season. And I mean, Denver has had their spots where they haven't looked very good. That opening week game against Baltimore, they didn't look very impressive offensively whatsoever. This is a 2-0
They didn't
football
last game
team.
either.
Yeah, this is a 2-0 football team and a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball. Whether or not you think Peyton Manning still has it or if he's going to be great in this game, there's tons of talent offensively, and that defense I think is what's even more scary because Denver's defense, especially that front seven, can get after it in ways that I don't think Minnesota or San Diego could. And if Minnesota's getting to Matthew Stafford as much as they were, I am scared to think of what Von Miller is going to do.
Don't forget about DeMarcus Ware on the other
I
side.
know.
But before we actually dive too deeply into the matchups, if I'm not mistaken, the winning score for each game has come off a turnover for Denver, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pick six the first game, and then a
And
fumble
a
return the
beautiful
second.
fumble recovery. Yeah, well, Jamal Charles fumbles for no apparent reason on a running play, and Denver gets a miracle win there before going to OT. Yeah.
You want to know what's damaging about that?
What's that?
Detroit loves to make mistakes to have to that the other team takes advantage of. So that's very concerning against this defense. It's obviously very opportunistic on top of the incredible pass rush that you've already discussed. There's not a lot of advantages in this game for Detroit going up against that defense, especially. I'm not. The one thing we can say for sure is that, and I know people say it every year, and he always comes back or does something, but Peyton Manning is not the same guy anymore. There's just no way around that. His arm doesn't look to have nearly as much zip on it as he used to, and it's really starting to catch up to him. So there are some weaknesses there that can be exploited. Also, Denver, so they brought in Gary Kubiak this offseason, who
Neutered
runs
Peyton
a
Manning
zone
completely.
blocking scheme.
Yeah.
And he runs his own blocking scheme.
Beautiful.
And he refuses to go away from it, regardless of the fact that offensive line is not very good.
Right.
They have a lot of problems on that side of the ball. And I keep picking the wrong team. I'm trying to stall until I find the Denver Broncos PFF scores here. But if you look at their offense, there's only two guys in the green with grades: Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, which is about what you'd expect. Everybody else is pretty darn bad, especially along that offensive line. So I think, to me, that is Detroit's advantage. Now, unfortunately, we don't know if Karan Reed's going to play. They obviously need him. They need Tyron Walker to rebound. But that defensive line versus that offensive line, the pressure they can put on him and Peyton Manning, because obviously that screws up all quarterbacks, is Detroit's only advantage in this game, and it has to happen.
Yeah, on our doc that we do preparing for each week, I put not NA for Detroit's biggest advantage because I just don't see one in this football game for Detroit. Not the way they've played in the first 2 weeks. Talking about Peyton Manning and that Denver offense, it's the problems we have with Detroit's offense. You can see a lot of problems in Denver. The same thing with the way they're calling plays. And Gary Kubiak has really neutered Peyton Manning in the sense that, well, Peyton Manning, he clearly doesn't have the velocity on the ball that he once had, and you rarely even see a spiral out of him at this point. But he still has one of the best minds in football, and at his age, that's what you're going to expect. Is he's going to be able to dissect the defense and make reads, quick decisions that other quarterbacks can't make. But Gary Kubiak has taken complete control of the offense and taken that away from Peyton Manning. So you've taken away arguably the best asset that Peyton Manning still has in his repertoire at this point, and you've turned all of that over to Kubiak, and you've seen the results through 2 weeks and what that's done to Denver's offense. I don't see a big advantage for Detroit in this game. I don't want to try and come up with one just for the sake of doing so. Peyton Manning doesn't have the arm strength, but he still has the timing and the intelligence. So as long as Denver gives him a chance to use his audibles and his adjustments at the line, I still think Denver's offense has an advantage over Detroit's defense.
See, and I'm still, despite the fact that how Detroit's defense has played and getting murdered up front at times, I can't go that far. And if they do get the ball out quickly, yes, that could be an issue if Terrell Austin continues to refuse to do anything about or to adjust the game plan. But this team is rushing for 2.8 yards a carry.
Right.
So they're not running the ball well, and that's supposed to be Gary Kubiak's thing. Peyton Manning's his quarterback rating this year is 74.2. Now,
Yeah.
for all of Stafford's problems this year, let's see here, waiting for it to spring up here. He has a higher quarterback rating at 81. I don't know who's been under more pressure, but it's definitely it
Both
has to be
incredibly
somewhat
bad.
comparable. Yeah, and Detroit's even ran for more yards, at least on average. So these things are, I really think there are big problems with Denver's offense. But the problem, and we might as well just go to it now, which Denver's biggest advantage they have, at least for me, is their defensive ends. They have DeMarcus Ware. They have Von Miller, or outside linebackers, whatever you want to call them. Goddamn sticklers. But they can really get after the quarterback. And if the last 2 weeks have been any indication of how this offensive line is going to play,
Yeah.
Detroit's in a lot of trouble. And it could get real ugly real quick for Stafford. Von Miller has 9 quarterback hurries. DeMarcus Ware has 7. This is 2 games. That's an incredible rate, and there are lots of guys with 3, 4 here and there that can also chip in as well. So this team is very scary. They got a good secondary behind them too. We've seen Aqib Talib doing very well. Chris Harris Jr. is one of the more unsung guys in the league, kind of a DeAndre Levy at the cornerback position. I don't know where Detroit can attack this defense and have any luck.
Well, and I don't know how Detroit's defense is going to stop the passing game for Denver, from the sense that uh, Peyton Manning, I don't think he's going to beat them deep down the field, because he's not going to be able, with arm strength, what have you, he's not going to be able to do that. But there's plenty of defensive holes, especially along the linebacking core, where short timing routes and finding seams in the defense, even within the 10-yard box, he's going to be able to do it. And I don't trust a Tahir Whitehead or a Stephen Tulloch to have any kind of reaction time to break things up in the passing game. Stephen Tulloch just doesn't have that. So you've seen Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders still manage to get their stats, especially week 2 there. Emmanuel Sanders is going to run roughshod over Detroit's defense, in my opinion. It's not going to be pretty. He's going to, if Keenan Allen goes for over 100 with crossing routes over the middle, Emmanuel Sanders is going to do more, and it's not going to be pretty. I don't know. That's assuming Detroit doesn't figure out ways to change what they did against the Chargers. I don't know what else they'd have in their bag of tricks to do differently, because I just don't think the personnel is there in the secondary outside of Darius Slay. You got 2 really good receivers there in Thomas and Sanders, and you can't cover them both with Darius Slay. Someone's going to be open.
Well, what Detroit needs to do, and what the game plan needs to be against somebody like Peyton, especially, is you need to A-gap blitzes. You need Levy out there to be able to cover up any mistakes. But whether he's playing or not, you can't really count on that at this point. But A-gap blitzes, get after the feet of Peyton. And obviously, I know you can't low hit. I'm not insinuating that, but what I'm saying
Submarine.
is, don't give him somewhere to step up into.
Right.
And really force him to now throw off that back foot. If you don't have arm strength when you have good form, what do you have when you have even worse form? So that leads me right into my bold prediction. I think you're going to see Peyton a little frustrated, and I think you're going to see him force a few things, because he's been prone to do that now. Look at Drew Brees. Drew Brees is obviously, he went downhill a little earlier in his career at a younger age, since I think he's 3 years younger, but it's that same type of mentality where, no, I still want to make a play. And we've seen Peyton have games where he forces a ball. I think my bold prediction is that Peyton Manning is going to have at least 2 interceptions this game.
Yeah, my prediction last week was actually the other side, was Stafford having multiple interceptions. He only had 1, so I didn't get that one right. You went with Stafford only getting sacked once, and for all the times he was hit in this game, I think he was actually officially sacked 1 time. So
I just say,
you can't backdoor your way into that one anymore.
Sacks right now.
Yeah, you can't backdoor your way into a right prediction any more than you did. Stafford was killed in this game, but through 2 weeks, he's only been sacked once. So theoretically, the offensive line is playing phenomenal in pass protection. Getting into my bold prediction, pretty much anything is going to be bold as far as positives from the offense at this point. But I'm going with Amir Abdullah getting 20 carries in this game. I think they overcompensate one way or the other, and I don't know how much you can trust Joe Lombardi to stick to any one thing, but after Abdullah gets so few carries in this game, I think Detroit's going to be in this game long enough to try and establish a presence on the ground, and Abdullah is clearly the guy over Joique Bell. I think he gets 20 carries at least in this game, somewhere around 20, 21, 22 in my opinion, so it's pretty bold considering this past week he only had 7 that went for, I think, a total of 9 yards, and the running game was completely non-existent.
Well, gosh, who wouldn't love to see them actually use him in that way? it, here's the thing, though. When you look at last week,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to throw a couple curveballs out there because there's a lot of topics of conversation. Like, don't give Bell the ball at all. He had 4 carries. Do you think that Abdullah should have had all 4 of those?
Well, no, I mean Abdullah, I guess nearly doubled his carries. It was 7-4. They just never even tried to commit to the ground game at all. And on the goal line, I can see going to Joik Bell or even in short yardage third down situations, but not out of the shotgun and just not the way they did it. If you're gonna, I mean,
Yeah.
outside runs or off tackle runs, I think have to be Amir Abdullah at this point, just because he gives you so much more versatility and he can make so many more things happen in the open field. Assuming the offensive line gives him any type of open field to work with, but on short yardage, between the guards, under center runs, there's a place for Joik Bell in this offense. You just haven't even had a chance to see what that looks like yet through 2 games because Detroit has no idea what they're doing offensively.
Well, mostly because Swanson's been just
He's
getting
oh
thrown
yeah,
around like a rag doll in the middle. But in plus, you saw what happened when Amir Abdullah was faced with guys in the backfield. He was able to make an explosive cut and still somehow pick up 3 yards.
right.
It's not one of those pretty plays, but instead of losing 2 or 3, you gain 3. I mean, that's a swing of 5, 6 yards every
Oh, a
play.
lot of the time it was just him
Well,
getting back to the line of
these
scrimmage.
yeah, and well, we all remember Barry Sanders having to deal with that issue too. Well, some of us, I guess some of the people listening probably aren't as old as me, but it's for a lot of us, at least in our early 30s or maybe late 20s. Um, Actually, you probably don't remember a whole lot of Barry yourself, do you?
My recollection of actually watching Barry is I remember the '98 season when he went for 2,000 in that game against the Jets. I remember that pretty vividly. But yeah, I didn't. I mean, the bulk of his career, I obviously was too young for. I didn't see most of it, but I remember '98, so I at least have some live Barry memories and being at the Silverdome for 1 game that season.
Well, speaking of which, I guess at some point one of us has to get one game right when it comes to these predictions. We're not
Not if we
both
keep
0
picking the
2
Lions, we don't.
on this season. I got to be honest, I am real tempted to give Detroit the final breakthrough because I don't think Denver as nearly as good a team as they look to be. But at this point, you just can't trust Detroit. You just can't at this point. I've got them losing 2017, and I think it'll be a raucous atmosphere. I think the public's really going to rally behind them, and I will not be shocked if Detroit pulls this game out. I don't think Denver's going to explode for that many points offensively. San Diego has 2 more points than them, and Denver actually through 2 games is only averaging maybe 18 points a game if you take away their defensive scores. So I don't think the offense is going to be that big of a problem. I just don't trust Detroit to be able to put up points, to make adjustments, to try to take DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller out of this game. And until I see better from Lombardi and Caldwell as far as getting this team to implement the little things, including and Terrell Austin as well, I just can't trust him.
Yeah, I can't trust him either, and there's not a ton of analysis that we haven't already given that explains why I'm going Denver 31-17 in this game.
Ooh.
I don't know if Denver does have a running game. I don't know if they need it because I don't see Detroit's pass defense doing much on short to intermediate throws. This isn't a game where Peyton Manning has 4 40-yard passes down the field that burns Detroit. It's just nickel and diming them and just beating this defense that I don't think is quick enough to react or athletic enough to hang with some of the better players on Denver's offense. Give me Denver 31-17. Home opener for Detroit. They need this one. They can't go down an 0-3 hole and expect to be a playoff team, but I just don't see them winning this
Well,
ball game.
do Detroit 20 years ago to this season started the
Mhm.
season 0-3. Went 10-3 the rest of the way, made the playoffs. This
Yeah,
is the most talented team Detroit's had since then. I'm not saying that there's a correlation.
yeah.
I'm just saying, at least there's a reason to have some hope next week if things don't go Detroit's way this week. Folks, we have a couple guests it looks like slated for the next 3 weeks. We're really specifically trying to focus on people that can give us the other side, can give us the other teams, since we're all, including you listeners, obviously, because well, you're listening to Detroit Lions podcast, know so much about the Lions, anyways. Don't worry, we'll still be bringing back your favorites like Jefferson, the POD guys, Ken Platt, everybody, and the sideline guys too. But these next few weeks, we're really going to focus on bringing in some fresh blood, some outside blood. Uh, as far as these predictions, if you folks don't like them, we understand them. I know there's quite a few people out there thinking that Detroit's going to go 0-16. let us know about it. You can let us know on Facebook, Lions Central Radio. You can let the show know on Twitter, Lions Central PFC. You can find me personally on Twitter at Brandon Alisoglu. That's ALISOGLU. And Nick Kostora at Nick Kostora. KOSTORA.
Yeah, once again, we really appreciate the Facebook question that Ron Hartley sent in this week. Please do take advantage of that, folks. We love using your insight on the show and analyzing what you guys have to say and what you're really concerned about. So please do continue to send in those kinds of questions. We're hoping to talk to you after a Lions win in Week 3. Obviously, neither of us are that optimistic that such a thing is going to happen, but we love to be surprised. So until next week, for Brandon Alisoglu, I am Nick Kostora. Thank you so much for tuning in to Lions Central Radio.